Welcome aboard the Boat Buyers Secret Weapon podcast, where we're dedicated to helping first-time and experienced boat buyers find the right boat at the best price so they have years and years of boating fun, because life truly is better on a boat. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Boat Buyers Secret Weapon YouTube channel. Don't pay too much for your next boat. Just visit boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/save to watch a short video. Now, let's hop aboard and have some fun. Hey, everybody. This is Captain Matt here with another episode of the Boat Buyers Secret Weapon. We've got a guest with us today, Chris. And Chris, if you would, tell everybody where you're at, what your boating style is hoping to look like, and we'll take the conversation from there.
All right. Thank you for having me. I'm very new to boating. I don't own a boat, haven't owned a boat. Several years ago, some neighbors invited us to the boat show in Atlantic City, and I was really kind of excited to go. I come from a big family. I'm the oldest of six, with children and grandchildren. We're looking at like 26 on my side alone. My wife also from a family that's growing, 20 plus. And I thought, let's go to the boat show. I always wanted to own a jet ski. We spend some time on the weekends at Brigantine Beach. It's one of the few drive-on beaches in New Jersey. And in certain parts of the beach, you're able to launch jet skis and use them around the cove in Atlantic City. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great? Now that I have the truck and I'm getting a little older, I'm soon going to have the time, I hope. Let's buy a jet ski. So we went to the boat show, and I was really kind of surprised at how expensive jet skis were.
Yeah.
And the one that I want was like, I want to say out of the gate, it was right around 15,000. And I thought, well, wait a minute. These pontoon boat things, they look like a lot of fun. I mean, a jet ski is a lot of fun for 2 or 3 people, but now I could get a lot more people on one of those pontoon boats. So the following year, went back to the boat show, with the full intent of looking a little more deeply into the pontoon boats. And a few of the dealers started asking me some good questions. Where do you want to use the boat? What do you want to use it for? And we really enjoy vacationing or spending time in the Lewis, Rehoboth, Delaware area. And I thought that would be kind of cool, to be able to take some runs back and forth between New Jersey and Delaware, go up the Delaware River to the Philadelphia area. And they said, listen, I know that they're telling you pontoon boats are made for the salt water and they're built to handle that now. But if you're really going to take passengers out on the open ocean, you're really going to need to invest in a real boat. And so last year,
right.
last year when we went back to the boat show, that's kind of when I started looking at some of the different brands. One dealer's really recommended Sea Ray, and then some friends have really kind of steered me towards Boston Whalers and Grady Whites because of their reputation for quality. And so I spend lots of time. I'm not ready to buy them. I'm about 2 years away from that. I have 2 kids in college, and I'm still paying those big bills. And then, once that time and that chapter in life closes and we begin to move on, I'm hoping to have the time and the resources to really make a serious go at this. And my goal is really just to provide the family with kind of, an opportunity to make memories, to get together, to spend some time on the water. And so when I started pricing some of those boats, even the Sea Ray with some of the upgrades, I thought, wow, I'm like 200,000 plus for someone who's never owned a boat. Is that really a smart thing to do?
Well, I'll tell you, there are people that make that decision and are tickled pink because of it. There are others that make it, and a year later they're taking a huge haircut and a little disappointed in the decision they made, or have a bad experience with operating it and make some expensive mistakes on the operation side. But let's get back to the area, because you're really talking 2 different pieces. You're talking boating in your local area, which would be Atlantic City, or where would the local boating be for the most part on just a regular Saturday?
That would be either anywhere on the southern Jersey shores, Atlantic City south to Cape May, and then coming across and up the Delaware River as far north as Philadelphia.
Okay. Okay. Um, so that's, I kind of want to get a sense for that, because that's gonna make an impact on where this conversation goes. One of the things I'd like people to think about is, where are you going to do 80% of your boating? Because what tends to happen is that 80% turns into almost all of it. And I like to steer away from making a buying decision for that one trip a year that is kind of, I would like to do this, but we don't know we're going to do it every time. So that run up to Rehoboth and that side of boating, is that something that you see you doing often, or is that something that would be, a once a year trip? Is that where the big family comes in?
Well, that's a question I can't easily answer, because both my wife and I are still working, but we have talked about, when it's time for retirement, potentially making a permanent move to the Rehoboth Lewis area. So if we moved down there, coming back and forth, that would be a regular thing. If we didn't, then no, we would stay in New Jersey, and then it would be the southern Jersey shore.
Okay. Because I know a lot of people boat in Rehoboth Bay, or is it Delaware Bay or Rehoboth Bay up there? In the Bay area off Rehoboth Beach and Lewis, they do a lot of pontoon boating up there. But that run from Atlantic City down, I think, is all open ocean, if I'm not mistaken, looking at the maps, and that's not my home boating area, so I'm going to have to go with your input a little bit here on that.
It is open ocean.
Okay, all right. So you're straight open ocean. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I'm with the dealers on making that run. About how long is it from wherever you would put in Atlantic City, Ocean City, down? How far of a run is that about to get into the bay?
I would say an hour, 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay, so it's doable, and there are certainly people that do it. I would be very cautious of the conditions. So let's go to, what do you see yourself doing while you're out on the water? Are you guys an active water sports family? Do you see yourself just kind of hanging out, floating in the water? Are you partiers? What does that style look like for you, Chris?
I would say we're all about getting together, more water sports, partying, meals. We're really good at cooking out, packing meals. I wouldn't say we're fishermen. We've never typically done that. I mean, certainly if we wanted to throw a rod in the water or do some crabbing or something like that, that may be fun down the road. But it would be primarily for gathering as a group, and then spending just days out lounging in the water, a sandbar somewhere, having lunch, dinner, certainly picking up a group somewhere and maybe motoring up to a restaurant to have lunch or dinner. I mean, we're big. Everything that we do as families really tends to gather around meals. So that would be the primary drive.
Okay. So running to maybe a restaurant or packing your own and heading out. Now, you mentioned family of your side being 26, your wife's side being 20. Is that including your two college kids, or is that?
Yep. Yeah, that would include them. Okay. And I don't plan to have that many on at one time.
Okay, that's where I was going. Is what does a big group look like to you? You're like, man, I could see us going out with a big group, and that would be half of them. What's your thoughts there on the biggest side that you would get?
I would say anywhere between 8. So my family's 4, so I would say another 4. So that would be anywhere between 8 and 12 would be the standard. Okay.
What would be typical? So if you can kind of think about just a regular weekend, not talking 4th of July or Memorial Day or the big family reunion, but what would you see being typical? Do you see just your wife and your college kids? Are they boys or girls?
Boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl. Okay. So you and your daughter and your son, just the four of you going out consistently. Do you see them bringing friends with them? Kind of what does a typical outing feel like for you? Obviously, you're sort of looking into your crystal ball.
I would say that may or may not include the kids. Certainly, uh, as they finish up the college years, we don't know what's going to happen for them for job opportunities, continuing with education after. But if they traveled with us, it would likely be with friends. But
Okay.
all of our family, both sides of the family, live in the same general area. So, picking up another 4 or 5 people is just a phone call away. So it would be common to be extended family. That would be the common factor.
So it sounds like, Chris, that 8 number is probably a number that would be pretty consistent.
Mm-hmm.
With the, hey, it would be nice to be able to get up to 12, and obviously the more the better. But let's consider budget too. Does that right? Am I getting that right? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I think you're on the mark there. Yep.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to get at, is because you're right. The pontoon style for the number of people is right up your alley. If you were in the Delaware Bay and you were closer up, yeah, I think that could be a style that's really great for you. But it sounds like that is at a minimum 2 years out or more, with your kids being in college. And then you'll be keeping it up near kind of Atlantic City in that area. What do you think about trailering? Would it be of any interest to trailer the boat to, maybe to Cape May or what is it, the villas? I'm just sort of looking at the map. What would get you close to Delaware Bay? Is that something that you mentioned? You've got a truck for when you were thinking the jet ski. Is that something that appeals to you, or that you could see, hey, maybe that's how we could get the best of both worlds?
Yeah, I think so, because we're not too far from the Delaware River either. So if we wanted to take a run down to the Jersey Shore and spend some time on the ocean or around the shore communities, I mean, that's an hour and a half away. If we wanted to shoot over to the Delaware River, that's anywhere 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And, we could do that launching in the Philadelphia area or going, further south towards the Delaware Bay. So that would give us a lot of options, both on the ocean side and the river side.
Yeah, because I see there's a lot of those little sounds and bays where you are. And you mentioned that fishing wasn't a big part of where you see yourself going. And again, I don't know the water up there all that well. So Great Bay and Reeves Bay, my gut tells me that for just kind of the water sports, the cooking out, some sandbars, some things like that, they're probably some decent options up in those bays. Does that sound right to you from what you know about the local area?
It does, and that really sounds like where I'm looking to go with this. Hanging out and eating and sunning and water sports and swimming and.
Yeah. So if and what I'm trying to figure out is, can we structure the 80% and still accomplish kind of those exciting, adventurous outings that would be, what you initially thought about was running the boat down the hour from, Ocean City down or Atlantic City down into the Delaware Bay, versus having to go a whole different style just so you could accomplish that outing. But still, I think that from what you're saying, is that's kind of a big part of where you see yourself taking the boating lifestyle for your family. Is that
Hmm. Yeah, I
okay?
would say
I
that's it.
don't know
Yep.
if I'm saying that clearly, but because then I think you can start looking at a pontoon where we're getting, a 24-foot pontoon, or even a 26, depending on what your budget is, or tritoon specifically. I think getting that big group of 8 on consistently, being comfortable, works well. And, for some of those, getting up to 14, even 16 people is doable at times.
Hmm.
But you're still not losing it because you're not taking it offshore to do any fishing or anything like that. How does that feel to you? Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, it does seem reasonable. I know that my one of the reasons my wife kind of liked the look of the Sea Rays was because of their configuration, which we thought was closest to any of the pontoon boats. There's just lots of deck space, lots of place for people to sit. Where you get into some of those bigger, more expensive boats, and they have a real, you can go out to the canyon and do some real serious fishing, but that might be too much of an investment for the first time boater.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something that you do want to consider, that initial investment. And hey, are you really going to love boating? Because here's the thing that can happen is, man, we get out there and we really love boating, but it turns out we love to fish, and because we really haven't done a lot of it, we didn't realize how much we enjoy it. And now you've invested a brand new boat, and a year into it, you're thinking, oh, if it just could do X. That's a mistake that I like people to avoid if they can. Now, it's going to happen for some people because they discover wake surfing, or they discover fishing, or they discover something that they're like, holy crap, this is amazing, I didn't realize this existed. Have you been out with friends? Like, what does your boating history look like, even if it's just renting a boat, or going out with friends?
We've rented a couple times in the Maryland area and taken the boat into, I forget the name of the bay, but we really, really enjoyed that. I also had a friend who had a speedboat, and we would launch that into some creeks around the Delaware River. And we would take that either in the creeks or out onto the river, and go water skiing and just hang out for the day, and pack lunch and things like that. So the extent of my experience is the pontoon boat rentals, which we really, really enjoyed, and a speedboat with some friends of mine.
Okay, okay. What about your kids? You mentioned that, hey, after college, we're not sure if they're going to venture off on their own, or if they're going to stay nearby, maybe continue their education. Have they had any boating experiences with friends, or anybody that was outside of your
No, nope,
involvement?
nope.
Okay, okay. All right. So let's talk. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. We've got the big family. We're kind of. I'm sort of learning the area with your input here, so I appreciate that.
Hmm.
Let's talk about the budget, but also kind of where your personal thermostat is for quality and for investment, things like that. In a perfect world, what feels really comfortable for you to invest in your boating lifestyle in just the boating portion?
I think the initial investment has to be, I would say maximum. I'm probably in the 150 range.
Okay. All right. Um, when you look at, and again, I'm going to ask some local boating questions here as it relates to budget. When you look at keeping the boat in your area, a pontoon is a little bit different because they don't have. I typically wouldn't recommend dry storage for a pontoon where they're lifting it in and out with a forklift. And my guess is there's not many racks and things like that in that area for it. What would storage look like for you where you're located? Do you have a outbuilding or something like that? Is there a storage location that you think could be an option for you?
I live on a pretty decent sized lot, so keeping it around the house out of season would be realistic.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking, or is it more,
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
available through facilities? Okay.
It's what would make sense for you. So if you can have it on your property, and you can trailer it back and forth, and that feels reasonable to you, I love that option, because one, it's, as far as the investment goes, it keeps it down. Two, you've always got it there. You'll find with any boat that you have, there's going to be some tinkering and some cleaning and just things like that need to be done to a boat. A lot of it in the saltwater environment needs to be done right after you use the boat. Rinsing it down, flushing the engine, spraying all that salt off it. And we'll talk about that as it relates to pontoons as well, a few things to think about. But I'm also thinking about, hey, in the heart of the summer, when you're using the boat consistently, the easier it is to use, the more you'll use it. So are there marinas that you can see yourself leaving the boat in the water? This trailering, is that something that interests you or intimidates you? How do you feel about those things?
I would say, in terms of ease, leaving the boat at a marina is probably going to be the easiest, only because I'm not pulling it out. I'm not. It would just seem, and then this is where I have I have no experience. It
Sure.
seems to me that would be easier. Hey, the boat's there. Everything you need to maintain the boat is there. Everybody who has boats is there. The expertise for the boats, it's all there. And kind of having that community would really kind of entice me to use it. Now, if I'm
Yeah.
totally off the mark there, tell me, like, you're living in fantasy land and it sounds
No,
nicer,
no,
but
I think you're right on the money. There's certainly community that goes with the right marina. So you've got to balance, where can I get a slip, because they can be tough to come by. So one of the things you might want to put on your list, since this is a couple years out, not like you're ready to go out and buy a boat tomorrow, is, hey, a couple of weekends over the next few months, even year, is venture out and just start checking out some marinas in your area. Do some research online, make a list of 6 or 7. They're typically going to be in proximity to each other, by the water. It may not be as easy to get to on land, but just go venture out and wander around and talk to people on the docks. Which one feels like a good fit for you? Find out how much they are, how easy is it for you to get to, as you think about using it. I think that would be a very valuable thing for you to do.
okay.
And then if you have the option to pull it out on a trailer, store it on your property in the off season, or maybe you find that, hey, the marina's great, they can wrap it for us, get it all cleaned up and tuck it away for $2,000. Hey, that's a good option as well. It's even easier. But I think that would be helpful for you to start zeroing in on, all right, what's this really going to look like on a day-to-day level? Okay, so that kind of, it doesn't answer that question, but I think it gets you pointed in the right direction there. The next thing is, let's talk about saltwater and pontoons. Is there, over the last 5 years or so, pontoon builders have figured out what works and what doesn't with aluminum and salt. So there's a few extra things that come with it, and it means that your pontoon isn't going to last as long. It means that your pontoon is going to live a harder life in general, just like all boats in saltwater do. So it's not all that different than if you got a Sea Ray or a Grady White or even a Boston Whaler, which those are made for that environment. It just means there's a few extra things you need to consider. The first is, if you're going to leave it in the water, Chris, you've got to paint the pontoons, and that's got to be done by somebody that really, really knows what they're doing, uses the right material, does it at the right temperatures, and does typically a base coat and then 2 other coats of the paint. So just something to think about. And people that don't know pontoons and don't know how to do it, avoid them like the plague, because they will make some big costly mistakes for you. When it comes to quality of the pontoon, I would stick on the higher end, because again, they're going to do things a little bit sturdier, a little bit stouter, better material, and with your right maintenance, it's going to keep them lasting longer. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what kind of, you mentioned you have a truck. What kind of truck do you drive?
It's an F-150 Super Crew.
Okay. F-150. What does your wife drive?
She drives an Acura.
Okay.
So that's not going to tow anything.
Well, it does, because here's why I asked that question is, are you somebody that drives a Acura, or are you somebody that drives a BMW, or do you drive a Ford Focus? It sort of tells me what level of quality and what level of luxury suits you. You drive an F-150, so pretty utilitarian, with a little bit of luxury on the Acura side. That's why I asked that question, not necessarily for any boating purposes, but just to give me a picture of the styling. Like I'll tell you an example. My father-in-law bought a boat 2 years ago, had never bought a boat before, and was talking about what brand should he get? Should he buy new or used? And he drives an F-150 crew cab, and every year gets a new one. So there was no really conversation about a used boat, because that's just not his style. And ended up his first boat, from what you said, he bought a $100,000 bow rider. For him, it was the right decision, because that's what would make him happy. He wouldn't have been happy in something else. So I'm trying to get a sense for you, what level of quality and luxury fits right for you, and what level of new and used fits for you, kind of based on the way you what would make you happy.
It's funny you say that, because we see people driving the fancy sports cars all the time, and one thing for sure that I know about myself and my wife, we are all about comfort and luxury, especially as we get older. I am not interested in being uncomfortable and clamping down into some fancy hard ride and sports car. So I know that the Acura, yeah, that's the way that I like to drive, and I am a firm believer in pay now or pay later. So I want to be wise with my investments, but clearly you get what you pay for. And I would be more comfortable paying more, having that initial quality on the front end, than taking a risk and, looking for the cheapest this and the cheap. If you pay for cheap, you get cheap. And I definitely don't want to do that.
Okay, perfect. That's what I wanted to get at, because I just did a video on my YouTube channel, which is how you found me, as you mentioned, about does Bayliner suck? It's one of the entry level boats. It's one of the cheapest boats made, has been for years, has a terrible reputation. But for some people, it's the perfect boat because of their budget, because they can fix things, because they just want to get on the water as inexpensively as possible, and they know. As long as they know what they're getting into, I think it's a great boat. Now, for my father-in-law, he would have been cussing me if I would have said, this is the boat you need to get. He would have looked at it and said, you're an idiot. There's no way I'm buying this thing. But it doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it wrong for him. It makes it right for somebody else. So for you, that leads me to, okay, definitely the tritoon, definitely having it equipped for saltwater, which there are some things, the bottom paint on the tunes, making sure that there's the proper anodes, making sure you go with the quality builder, that their saltwater edition it doesn't have dissimilar metals in the construction of it, what that means, Chris, you may not be aware, but this is for all the other listeners as well. One of the biggest causes of problems in the past with pontoons is when you put two dissimilar metals together, it causes corrosion. There's some scientific stuff going on that's a little bit over my head. I know what it does and I know what to avoid. And so you have to protect against that. Quality manufacturers have figured this out and said, hey, there's a huge market on the coast. If we build these things right, they can last for and hold up in that environment. There's a huge opportunity for us to increase our market share. And that's exactly what they did. So brands like Bennington, Harris, Barletta, Premier does a pretty good job. There's probably some that I'm missing, but those more expensive, higher level brands are the ones that I would encourage you to focus your search on. And as you go around, what I would do, there's a dealer in some dealers in the Rehoboth area that I know. The Avalon, one of them's an Avalon or Tahoe dealer. They're essentially the same brand, but two different brand names. That what you may want to do is, in addition to kind of checking out different marinas and sort of getting a sense, is also look for some of those high-end dealers. And I would go over to the Delaware side. Maybe, could be I don't know how long it gets there by land, but maybe your next time on vacation down to Rehoboth is stopping a couple of dealers there, because I know they put a lot of pontoons on Delaware Bay, and then visit some pontoon dealers, maybe somewhere between Atlantic City and Cape May, and stick in those high ones and just start asking them the questions about what do people do? What can people do? What do you recommend for this local area? And I think you'll get a lot more local boating knowledge that will be valuable for you when you take ownership, but also help you make the right choice. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I feel like you came to me for some answers, and I'm giving you homework or jobs to do, but I think there's things that I can't answer that you can get answered really well by narrowing in and talking to the right people. Because I sold Sea Rays when I was selling boats. I sold Sea Ray, I sold Boston Whaler. They're awesome boats, but if I didn't focus on pontoons and saltwater, I would say, oh my God, it's a nightmare, because that's what it had been for a long time. Putting a pontoon in saltwater was, you may get a couple of years out of it, and before it started truly falling apart. And they figured it out, and they're doing a lot of smart things in the build process. And like I said, it's still going to have a rough life. It's still not gonna last you 30 years with no problems. But with the proper maintenance and the proper build, you're going to be in pretty good shape. The other one I would add to that, I don't know if I said it is Barletta. So those are some dealers that I would look at. And then the next thing that I would look at, Chris, would be, of those brands, which boat do I like? But more importantly, narrow it down to the ones that you really love. They're going to have similar layouts, which you and your wife and kids can kind of, oh, I really like this one. But every manufacturer is going to have a similar layout to that. I would look at, what dealer do I like? What dealer is giving me honest information? What dealer do I click with? What dealer's close by physically, so that if I do need repairs, that I trust them and they're going to be easy to get the boat to, or they have a mobile service, they can come to the boat and do the work on the boat if it's that type of work. Or have you been out and actually talked to any dealers other than at the boat shows?
Only the boat shows, but one of the things that really drew me into the process with this particular dealer, when I attended the boat show, so this was the second one, and I was looking at the pontoons on that second go around, and he said to me, what do you want to do? And that's when I talked about, potentially some offshore stuff in the southern Jersey shores, maybe shooting across to Delaware. And he was the one who suggested, hey, I really think you should look at a C-Ray. It might be a better fit for you. And I said, listen, just so you know, I'm really years away from the purchase experience. Are you sure you want to invest the time talking with me? And he's like, absolutely. If I can educate you and maybe develop a long-term customer, I'd be happy to do it. And that dealer was MarineMax. And I'll say that that particular salesman has kept up with me, invited me to different events and things like that. One of his recommendations was when looking for your dealer, consider the size of it, and if you're somebody who's going to be moving around or taking trips here and there, you know, a dealer like MarineMax was much larger and had a larger footprint, and so that advice is advice I've been given in the past, but I've only talked with them at the boat shows. I mean, would you say that do dealers get annoyed if you're in there and you're not there to buy and just kind of searching around for information and trying to get a feel for what they're like, and or that's what they're expecting?
The wrong dealers. The right dealers have the attitude of the MarineMax guy that you talked with. Here's what I like to do is a sales guy, and I'm one of them. I'm a sales guy, and that's what I did when I was selling boats, and I was at the boat show, and I'm gonna say things because I want to sell a boat. Now, my heart's in the right place, and I was that guy that would have hey, you're buying 2 years out. I'm still gonna sit down. I'm gonna build the relationship with you, and I would hope I was the type of guy that when people bought their boat 5 years later, they said, you know what? He was truly there to help us. And it sounds like that's what you got with the MarineMax guy. Mm-hmm. More importantly, though, because that's important, you need to have a good feel for that guy. But the other thing that I would do is I would also walk and talk to their service department and just have a couple of questions. Say, hey, I'm considering a pontoon. You know, I've been talking to Bob in sales, and he's been great. But I had a couple of questions for you, and talk to, don't overdo it. Don't be rude or selfish or whatever the right word is for that. But, mm-hmm. Have a 5-10 minute conversation with them and get a sense for how helpful are they. Because even for me, I worked at a great dealership, and they were fantastic. But even at times, I got frustrated with our service department because no service department is perfect. And I would have a client that I would promise, hey, we can do this. Service couldn't get it done the way I wanted. And there were times where I just did it because that's how I took care of my customers. Now, what you want to get a sense for is how easy is that service department going to be to work with, knowing that none of them are perfect and everybody's going to make mistakes, but do they have that same vibe that you feel comfortable with? As far as locations, yeah, MarineMax, I think they're 70, 80 locations now after selling some off and now acquiring a bunch in the past couple of years. That's valuable, so that if you are in another location and they have one there, hey, you've got somebody to service you. But I, again, go back to my 80% rule. Where are you going to be boating 80% of the time? And who's going to be taking care of you a majority of the time? Because you assume I'm not going to break down when I'm on vacation, although it happens and it can happen, but who's going to take care of you a majority of the time? And I want to make sure I'm going to have a great relationship with them, whoever they are. Does that make sense?
Okay. It does. Yep.
So going in, I think that's kind of a super insider secret is going and talk to the service department, talk to the service writer. Typically that person has been with them for a long time and is going to be with them for a long time. And I'm generalizing, but if you have a good relationship with that service writer or the parts person, that's gonna ensure that you have a good. That's going to more likely ensure that you're going to have a good experience with that dealer, whoever it may be. And MarineMax, just like any large business, it depends on the people that are there. So as long as you click and feel good about the people that are there, and I would imagine they probably have the Harris brand at the MarineMax up there, or maybe Bennington.
I'm not sure because I focus so much on the other brands. I discounted the purchase of the tritoon, focusing on something else. So, but I'm back to where I started.
He was absolutely right, Chris, about if you were offshore and off the South Jersey shore, and you're going offshore and you want to make that run across the Delaware Bay to Rehoboth. That I would definitely start pushing towards Sea Ray, maybe the Grady or the Whaler if you talked a little bit of fishing, because that's what's common up there. But it took me a while before I said tritoon, because man, if you really are just doing some water sports, kind of partying and cooking out, maybe it doesn't even get into the ocean, and you figure out another way to make your grand adventure in over to Rehoboth and traveling. So I think that's probably a good person that you were talking with, and just do that next step and talk with the people behind the scenes in service that are really going to be the ones that determine how happy are you 3 years after the fact.
So
how well are you taken care of?
If my wife and I do make the move to Delaware, and then we find that we're likely going to be coming back and forth to the Jersey Shore quite a bit, because that's where my family spends some time. That would be, I think, a game changer in the overall plan. If that were the case,
I would think so.
Would that be a case where you'd say, the tritoon's probably not a good fit for the lifestyle you're looking to lead? And then, where would you recommend I look? Was I tracking when I was thinking the layout of a Sea Ray is probably going to give me the most bang for the dollar? Those Grady Whites, those Boston Whalers are so beautiful, but clearly fishing vessels.
Unless you're looking at like one of their dual consoles, but they're still going to be mainly geared toward fishing. And with the budget of $150,000, it goes a really, really long way on the pontoon side. But you start getting into the 25, 27 footer. And if it's just going to be you and your wife out, there's a certain point where, hey, you don't want to get too big either, for the first outing or for the first boat. I would say a Sea Ray or that style would do well. I would lean towards outboard in the saltwater environment. But the Sea Ray Sundex give you a lot of that roominess that you find in a pontoon, just not quite as much. Although the more offshore and the more rough stuff you're going to run in, I would start thinking maybe a traditional bow rider that's a little bit deeper up in the front, up in the bow. But yeah, I think that is a great option. The more you start thinking about, I'm truly going to be out in the ocean, I'm truly going to be making those runs across the bay in some maybe less than perfect conditions.
Okay, so I really have to hone in on where we're going to land and spend our retirement years and what we're going to do while we're there. That's something I hadn't considered. So that was great perspective. Thank you.
Yeah. Here's an option that we really haven't talked about. It's a short term. We talked about going to the marinas. We talked about talking to dealers. A boat club is a way that you might be able to join for a year and just say, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to run a tritoon if they have one in the fleet. and I'm going to run. They'll have something similar to a Sea Ray or to a Grady or a Whaler, and we're just going to go out and we're going to boat and we're going to take that trip or a partial trip. They probably won't let you keep the boat overnight in most boat clubs, but just start doing some of those things that you want to do. Be around the docks and talking to other boaters that maybe have done similar things. And you'll learn a lot that way too, and experience it firsthand and figure out, dang, we really do love this. What we love is we love cruising and we love the adventure of going to a destination. Well, now you start leaning more towards that Sea Ray, or gosh, you know what? Sitting back in these bays and anchoring out of the sandbar, that is our style. The tritoon is definitely going to be the way to go. And that may be a way to avoid a $100,000 mistake and having to change styles and maybe not enjoying it as much as you would have, and sort of just dipping your toe in the water.
That's why I was so excited to find your YouTube page and and your boat buyer secret weapon, because ultimately the bottom line for me is, man, I don't want to make $100,000 mistake.
Yeah, it's there's so many unknowns, and even with this conversation, you've got some unknowns in what your life is going to look like when you get ready to make that purchase. But there's a lot of boxes you can check off and questions you can answer in the next year or so if you know what questions to ask and you know what to think about. I think that you're making the smart choice, and unfortunately, it's so easy to get excited about the shiny lights and the shiny fiberglass and the big horsepower in the back of a pontoon and be like, holy crap, this is awesome. And you jump in and you don't take that step back and say, okay, what really is going to be right for us based on everything? And there's a lot to consider for sure. So I'm glad you found me too. I love that I'm able to help boaters, and also not have an ulterior motive to push it to a brand or even buying a boat. If a boat club is right, a boat club is right. If no boat's right, no boat's right. I just want to make sure that you enjoy it if you jump in.
Can I ask one final brand question?
Sure, absolutely.
So a piece of advice that I got from somebody was, listen, the Sea Ray is a great boat, but they really haven't been in the outboard business for a lot of years. Can you hear me?
You're kind of cutting in and out, Chris.
Do you have any concerns about Sea Ray Tippling being an IO kind of company that's only recently got into outboard engines, or they've come along like everybody else?
I don't. The thing hanging off the back is a Mercury, which they've been building them for forever. Heck, my first boat had a 85 Mercury 2-stroke on it when I was 5 years old, and that was 40 some years ago. So they've been building them forever. Sea Ray has I don't think it's shared as much as people might think when they're selling it, but they do have the intelligence of all the other Brunswick brands to pull from that have been using outboards. I wouldn't have any concern about that whatsoever. To me, it's a non-issue.
Great. Well, I do have my homework. Thank you very much for all that.
yeah. I took copious notes. More questions, but hopefully they're the right. I know most of them are the right questions anyway. And get the expert advice locally, because I think for you, I think that's a key part. And even just going to a marina and just chatting some people up. I think you will learn a lot if you go to a marina and you see a Bennington or a Harris or one of those top level brands. Talk to the people, but also know that everybody has their own boating style, and that's going to bias their opinion a lot. and they're going to have a Grady, and you're going to talk to them, and they're going to say, you're crazy for buying a pontoon. Don't worry about their opinion on the pontoon. Ask them about the Grady lifestyle and what they have to say there. Ask the pontoon guy about the pontoon lifestyle, but always know in the back of their mind, it's colored by the way they boat and what their experience has been. May not be exactly what you and your wife and your kids want to do in your boating style. So keep that in mind at all times.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, Chris,
Awesome.
this has been a fun conversation. I've got some boating contacts up in that area, and I would love to get out on the water there. It looks like a beautiful area. Any last questions that you have? We're coming in on almost an hour here, so hopefully you got some value. But any last questions that you have?
Nope, tremendous value. Just thank you very much for doing this and for your willingness to bring people onto the podcast and share your expertise. For somebody who's not even into this yet, this is really one of the resources I've been looking for. So thank you.
Let's pull up the anchor and run this podcast back to the dock. We'll be back again with another helpful and fun episode next time. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, visit boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/guest, and I'll help offer insights into your boat research and shopping experience. Also, we'd appreciate it if you took just 2 minutes to rate and review this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. It helps others find us so we can help more boaters. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it in your boating groups on social media. They will certainly thank you. And by the way, if you haven't already, grab your free Boat Buyers Secret Weapon Toolkit at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/toolkit. And so you don't pay too much for your next boat, visit boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/save for a short video. Now, before we go, I want to leave you with a few first-time boating tips for when you own your new boat. Number 1, know your local boating laws, basic navigation rules, and how to operate your boat safely. It'll make boating even more fun for everyone. 2, be aware of your wake at all times and pay attention to no wake zones because you are responsible for your wake. When maneuvering at slow speeds, you can put out an enormous wake. If going slow, be courteous, save some fuel, and drop down to idle speed, just in forward gear to ensure there is no wake. This could save you an expensive ticket and will keep you from being that guy on your waterway. Number 3, boats do not have headlights. They have docking lights, specifically made for seeing in tight quarters and docking. Do not turn your docking lights on while cruising down the water. It can blind other boaters and is very dangerous, and again, could save you an expensive ticket. Number 4, follow the maintenance schedule for your boat. Change the oil, impeller, gear lube, winterize if you need to winterize in your area. Inspect your trailer tires, bearings, and grease the hubs if you're a trailer boater to ensure you don't experience expensive and unnecessary repairs that will impact your boating time. Number 5, always double check your plug is in, your battery is charged, and the fuel is full before heading out for a day on the water. It could just save your boating day. And if you're a trailer boater, I've got a few extra tips. Number 1, at the boat ramp, prepare your boat, your gear, and your guests in the staging area. Then, when you're ready, back down the ramp, unload the boat, head to the parking lot, and right back down to your boat to be fast and courteous to your fellow boaters and don't tie up that ramp unnecessarily. Next, use transom tie-down straps when trailing your boat. Very bad things can happen if you don't, and they do happen. 3, check everything in the boat is secure before heading down the road. Seat cushions, gear, keys, towels, even tubes and lily pads can get blown out when pulling your boat down the highway or interstate. And most important, have fun. Enjoy your boat and get on the water as much as possible because life truly is better on a boat. Until next time, this is your friend in boating, Captain Matt.